and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world, wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the brightest day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also places of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? Mary saying, I love you. I hear the babies cry, I watch them grow. There's joy and and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful
Okay, so I think I'll introduce myself. Hello, my name is Anne-Marie Henderson. I'm here from Reading University. You should hopefully be able to see our agenda for this evening on your screen. And our aim tonight is to listen to each other and find out how the COVID-19 crisis has impacted our communities across the whole Thames Valley area. We also want to think about the way that we want things to be in the future. Where we want to be things in the future. Sorry, just got a bit of feedback there. So this evening we'll finish then with some action as we try and make our hopes turn into reality. So first of all, do I have consent for your agenda, for this agenda? And if you could indicate your support with a thumbs up, either in reality on the video or by using the chat as well. Excellent, fantastic. Okay, thank you. And then I'll introduce some of the other chairs, or let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Alison Peabody. I belong to St Michael's Church in Summertown in Oxford. And it's really great to be here with you this evening as we look forward to the launch of Citizens Alliances in Oxford and in Reading. We've got a lot of important business to get through this evening, so we're going to have to be quite disciplined. And in order to help us with that, Stephanie Lang will be acting as our timekeeper. If you're speaking, she will give some kind of warning. Perhaps she could ring whatever it is or show us what that's going to be when you've got 20 seconds left. And we'll then do it again when your time is up. So Stephanie, could you show us that warning that you're going to give us?
Yes, hello everybody. At 20 seconds, I'll give you a little ring of the bell like this. And then when your time's up, it will be an extended ring like this.
That's great. Thank you very much, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
Hi, good evening, and welcome to the inaugural Assembly of Thames Valley Citizens. My name is Hala Afifi, and I belong to Turby's Garden Tea Room in Milton Keynes. I will be one of the 4 co-chairs and I'm delighted to welcome people from across the Thames Valley area to this very special occasion. This event is being live streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and Vimeo. So a big welcome to those of you who are joining us on all these different ways. We hope you enjoy our assembly and feel part of it with us as well. And I'm going to introduce the last of the co-chairs for tonight. Please, Tim.
Thank you, Hala. My name's Tim Norwood. I'm from the Anglican Church in Milton Keynes, and I've been involved with Citizens MK since it was founded 10 years ago. And this evening marks a really important birthday for us, and it's great to celebrate it with our new friends. We look forward to working with citizens across the Thames Valley area as we seek to make this world a better place. We believe that change is needed and that change begins with listening. And so this is where we're going to begin this evening.
Thank you, Tim. I would like now to welcome our first guest, the Bishop of Oxford, the Right Reverend Dr. Stephen Croft, as our first speaker. I would like to remind you all that Stephanie will be keeping an eye, as mentioned before. So please keep an eye on the clock. Bishop Stephen, what does this evening mean to you?
I guess I won't be the first person to forget to unmute this evening. Lovely to be here. Thank you for your welcome. And amazing to have so many people gathered together from all across the Thames Valley. I'm the Bishop of Oxford, which covers the whole of Berkshire, Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire, the Thames Valley area. And it's great to be joined by my colleagues, Bishop Alan, Bishop Olivia, and Bishop Colin as well. We'll all have been doing a lot of listening and reflecting on the COVID crisis and what it means for our life together. I'm currently travelling virtually across the Thames Valley, meeting with all of our groups of clergy in 29 different sessions. As churches, we've been struggling with similar issues to everybody else, how to reach out to those who are vulnerable, how to support those who are in danger or hungry, or whose physical or mental health is fragile, how best to care for children in schools, when they can't access the usual educational support and pastoral support, and how to continue to be a worshipping community when our normal patterns of meeting and sharing can't happen. We've learned a huge amount, and we'll need to remember what we've learned. I'm sure we'll need to mourn the negatives and the difficulties, but we'll need to remember the positives as well, the way that people have pulled together and looked out for each other, how we've had a deeper realization that our health and security is bound up with that of others, and that people are not alone, even if we feel lonely, how so many people volunteered in hundreds and thousands to support the NHS, and all those beautiful symbolic actions which have been happening, especially on Thursday evenings as we meet this evening, but in other ways as well, to appreciate those who may not have been as visible previously. There has been, ironically, because we've been so separated, a new sense of being in this together, of togetherness. And we've discovered that the response to the crisis must be collaborative. We've rediscovered a focus on human relationships, and we've discovered what we miss most is actually our interaction with other people, our family and friends and colleagues. I saw my new granddaughter on Saturday for almost the first time since she was born 3 months ago, and it was a wonderful day, although I couldn't hug her. So it's great to be here this evening as we think about a new and a better way forward for our communities post-COVID. It's a conversation that's going on in many different places. I was in Parliament this afternoon in a similar debate about how to build better for the future. Tonight there'll be an opportunity for deep listening. We're a very diverse group. We need to hear how it's been for one another. What experiences have we had? What injustices have we seen emerge? What familiar injustice has been brought into sharper relief? What have we glimpsed of the world as it should be over the last months? How can we see ways of living that are more sustainable as we face the huge challenge of the climate emergency. And we're here to listen and speak, but also, as been said, to draw up a plan of action. In our Diocese of Oxford, we want to be churches more like Jesus Christ, for the sake of God's world, to be more contemplative, more compassionate and more courageous. And our partnership with Citizens UK has really sprung very deeply from that vision. So we are very glad to be investing time and energy and financial resources to help launch Thames Valley Citizens. We see this partnership as vital, as a powerful way of enabling Christians across the diocese to join with other faith groups and civic organisations in a process of change making. The Citizens MK has pioneered this in Milton Keynes, and we're excited to see this growing and extending now to Reading and Oxford and across the Thames Valley area. So we want to see genuine change, which is deeply rooted and determined by the stories of real people in real situations, based on deep listening, the constant building of relationships for the common good. And as we would all recognise, I think, this could not have come at a more appropriate moment.
Fantastic, thank you. I think that was a really powerful way to open this evening. In Citizens, we believe that the power to achieve change begins with relationships, and that's the most powerful tool that we have to do that is the one-to-one conversation. So we're going to take a few minutes now to do that, and we're going to put everyone in breakout rooms so that you can talk to each other and learn from each other. So the question for this evening is, how has COVID-19 affected you, your institution and your local community? So we're only going to have a few minutes for this, so please make sure that you listen as much as you speak. So I think we should go into those rooms now.
Hello, Erinma.
Hi there.
Good to meet you. I have to warn you, as the conversation starts, that we aren't in a tiny room. We're in a big room, and we're actually on Facebook Live and YouTube at the moment, so other people can see us. So we need to be careful what we say. But we've got a few moments now to talk about how our communities have been impacted. So I'm Tim from Milton Keynes. Erinma, tell me about yourself. Where do you come from?
That's always a challenging question. So I'm literally situated in London, Hackney, where I'm actually from. Excellent. Originally, East End. Yeah. But, I work at University of Reading.
Brilliant.
And then my heritage background is Nigerian and Danish and European and British.
Fabulous. And so how has your community where you live and the community where you work, how has that been affected by the coronavirus outbreak?
I mean, so being part of a Black community in London, I would say it's been incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
One of the wonderful things on my street is everybody's kind of come together, which has been fantastic. And you talked about different faiths. One of my neighbours, who happens to be Muslim, I'd never met him before when I moved here, and he came knocking on my door, and he left me a face mask and some hand cleansing and gloves and stuff, and some chocolates. So I felt some neighbourliness. Obviously, as a Black community, we are devastated by COVID-19, yeah. But the response, I think, from people has been quite incredible. Likewise, at University of Reading, I have got some incredible and amazing colleagues, and I think that we've worked very carefully through the crisis to make sure that we're all looking out for one another. But we all do have community partners that we work with as well. So we've been trying to do that kind of rapid response where we do make sure we check in on one another and that we keep some of those community groups going that we're part of.
Yeah, we've got just a minute left. I just share a bit about what's going on in Milton Keynes. It's probably very different to Hackney, I suspect. You can see Milton Keynes behind me. It's as you know, it's very low density. So social distancing in some parts of Milton Keynes has been very easy, but in some of the more disadvantaged areas, obviously there have been real difficulties. I think from the point of view of the communities that I belong to, the churches, there have been a real mix of responses and impact, and from some real getting out there and working out how you can feed people, through to the whole question of how do you keep your community going when the only way to operate is online. So lots of people, particularly some of our older people, on very steep learning curves. But it's been an interesting time, and I think we're coming through it having.
Hello, Surej.
Oh, Kushida, are we all in the main room again? Or
are we in the main room again?
I don't know where we are, but
I think we're still in the breakout room. So I think we.
Hi, everyone. That would be great.
Okay, are people back now for the roll call?
Yes, I think everyone should be back in, so we can move ahead with the agenda.
Okay. The members of Citizens Alliance are local institutions, as you know, who work together for the common good. And we'd like to recognise the members of Citizens MK, Milton Keynes, this evening, as they celebrate their 10th birthday. And their names will be read out by the Mayor of Milton Keynes. So could you all wave when your institution is mentioned, please? And Councillor Geary, could you please read the names?
I could indeed, thank you. So, the Church of Christ the Cornerstone, Jubilee Wood Primary School, Milton Keynes Academy, Milton Keynes Congolese Community, Milton Keynes Council of Faiths, Milton Keynes Deanery, Milton Keynes Green Alliance, Milton Keynes Muslim Association, Milton Keynes Quaker Meeting, the Open University, Orchard Academy, Oxford Aspire, Q Alliance, Southwood Primary School, St Augustine's Catholic Church, St Friedwide's Church, and Truby's Garden Tea Room.
Thank you.
Brilliant. It's exciting to have people here who are thinking about forming a Citizens Alliance in their area. There are people here from Reading, Oxford, and across the Thames Valley area, and I'm going to read the list of organisations that we've got. AFI UK, Fair Play, Medina Mosque, Mint House, Open Door, Oxford Brooks, Oxford Hindu Temple and Community Centre, the Oxford Hub, St Mary and St Nicholas Church Littlemore, St Michael and All Angels Church Summertown. Alliance for Cohesion and Racial Equality, Active Learning, Communicare, Connect Reading, High Sheriff of Berkshire, Launchpad, Nepalese Community, Parents and Children Together, Parenting Special Children, Reading Area Green Christians, Reading Climate Change Partnership, Reading Minster, University of Reading, St John and St Stephen's Church, St Michael's Church Tilehurst, the Mustard Tree, Whitley Community Development Association, and from across the Thames Valley, All Saints Church Bedford, All Saints Church Didcot, Buckingham Archdeaconry, Diocese of Oxford, a bit of a Diocese of St Albans here, Dorchester Archdeaconry, Mersley Deanery, St Peter's Church Didcot.
Thank you, Tim. The COVID-19 crisis has been difficult for everyone, but some organizations have faced particular issues. We're going to hear from leaders from local government, emergency services, and the NHS. We want to recognize the role they have played, hear more about their specific challenges, and find out what we in civil society do or can do to help. Each speaker will have 3 minutes, and it would be great if you can help us to keep that in place. It will help us to give time for a range of different people. Thank you. So Anne-Marie, can you please start introducing Police and Crime Commissioner?
There we go. I'm not muted. Have I been muted again? No. Okay. So first of all, I'd like to welcome Anthony Stansfield, the elected Police and Crime Commissioner for Thames Valley Police, who's going to give us 3 minutes on the challenges that the police are facing at this time and expect to face in the future. So before you begin, Mr. Stansfield, we'd like to thank you and your colleagues for keeping us safe in COVID. And we're glad that you received the rainbow cake from us earlier today, with our thanks to your special role in covering all of Thames Valley. So over to you.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for the cake for a start. I've had my hair cut since that photo was taken this morning, so looking slightly more respectable. I think the first challenge the police faced was that actually quite a lot of police officers actually got the coronavirus, and quite a lot of our staff did. And we initially started off with a lot of people having to self-isolate, even if they hadn't got it, somebody in their family got it. So we were fairly low on police numbers, but that sorted itself out reasonably quickly, and we got back to normal. I think working from home for all the police staff and a lot of the police officers was a major business to start with, but I think that was sort of settled down very quickly. It was interesting that crime went down. 999 calls went down by nearly a third. I think household burglary went down because far fewer people were in their houses. The late night economy no longer existed, so there were far less problems in the evening. Drug and county lines was made far more difficult by the fact there were very few cars on the road, very few trains going around. I think our biggest worry was probably domestic abuse, whether that was going up. I mean, the figures didn't show it going up, but on the other hand, it would have been difficult for people to report it. On the other hand, quite a few people weren't living together anymore, so in other ways it might have gone down. I think we've had a problem now with various protests that have gone on, as you know, in Milton Keynes and in Oxford, but I think that has been policed well. There wasn't much keeping distances between people, which was a problem. You ask how the public, can help the police. I think the main thing is stick to the rules and be sensible about them. And the rules were fairly simple to start with. They become somewhat complicated, especially for the police to police them. And we have different rules right across the UK, in Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and England, which makes it confusing for everybody. I think my biggest worry is that when we come out of this whole issue with much greater unemployment, whether crime is going to rise quite considerably in the autumn. And I think we are concerned about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stansfield. I was particularly struck by your comments about domestic abuse and, how the fact that people were in lockdown and potentially unable to report it, and whether that does mean then that has actually gone down or not. But we look forward to exploring this issue and more with you later on in the meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We're next going to welcome Joe Harrison, the Chief Executive of Milton Keynes University Hospital. Joe, over to you.
Good evening, thank you. The NHS saw a significant change in the way that it operates as a consequence of COVID-19. And I think our greatest challenges have been the emotional and physical stresses across our workforce over a significant sustained period of time. The public have been outstanding in terms of the support for the whole of the NHS. Particularly within Milton Keynes, we've seen people going continuously above and beyond what's been required of them in the day job. And so the team coming together at the hospital it's been a pleasure and an honour to be the leader of that organisation. In terms of how we can be supported over the next several months, I absolutely reiterate the need to maintain social distancing. We're not out of the woods yet. Please be patient about accessing routine, planned and elective services. We are trying to restart those as soon as possible. And I think my final point, which might seem a little strange, is that we too have seen a significant fall off in what you might deem to be routine services. And we are really concerned that we have some very sick people in our community that are either afraid of coming to hospital because of COVID-19 or indeed don't want to bother us. Both of those, please put them to one side. If you are genuinely seriously ill, please come to our hospital and we will look after you. We're very good at making sure that we keep COVID-19 patients separate from individuals with other conditions. So I think please help us by, if you are seriously unwell or feeling unwell, come to the hospital. And that will save you and time and effort in the longer term. I don't want to run out of my time, so I'll leave it here. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for being disciplined. We didn't get the bell ring, so you're doing okay. It's been really good to have you with us this evening, and we do appreciate everything you and your team are doing. Thank you for giving us the time this evening.
Apologies, I can't stay on, but thank you.
Okay, it's good to see you.
And now,
thank you. Oh, sorry, Alison, you go.
I'm delighted to be able to introduce Councillor Dr. Hosni Jafari Marbini from Oxford City Council. Are you there? I think I've seen your name, Councillor.
Perhaps are you muted?
Maybe I just said the name badly. Hosni,
I think she's dropped off the attendee list, so I don't know if she's having problems with. So maybe we carry on.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll move on with. I'd like to introduce then Councillor Jason Brock from Reading City Council. Jason, hopefully you're there.
Oh, yeah, I'm much better than listening to Oxford anyway, so don't worry about it. So I was asked to talk about challenges and how civil society can help. I mean, the main challenge, in all honesty, that we've had in Reading is capacity and all of the ancillary effects that kind of come with that. So the council, I suppose, has a strained capacity even in normal times, thanks to a decade of austerity, but especially now, trying to deal with a constant volume of new guidance, an influx of volunteers as well, who, it becomes surprisingly difficult to process and make sure that they're happy and that we can find something for them to do. Capacity to deal with the great many challenges that occur. We have a very large council housing stock in Reading, for example, which brings with it its own particular challenges. We're very lucky in Reading in that we have an incredibly vibrant and diverse voluntary sector. And we established a community hub very quickly and have essentially been able to allow the voluntary sector to take some ownership and leadership over its own response, whilst ensuring that it's well coordinated with what we can do as a council. But in terms of how civil society can help, I mean, actually, I think I wanted to address that maybe in a slightly bigger way, which is one of the things that's frustrated me at points is that there's a clear breakdown in parts of the community around senses of mutual obligation and concepts of civic virtue. That's not to say that there aren't fantastic examples of people helping one another, and quite right to celebrate those. But I also get an inordinate number of emails from people who I call collectively the curtain twitchers, complaining about their neighbours breaching something or complaining about their neighbours not doing something. But it's clear that there's not a dialogue between them and their neighbours. It's a great shame, even in a town like Reading, which actually can be very, very parochial in a lot of ways, that some of that very basic grassroots level of community has broken down a bit, and we feel a bit more distant from one another. And so for me, that would be where civil society has a really important role, because you can't solve a problem like that by the application of state-led initiatives. It has to come from the community upwards. And so that would be, I suppose, my central point. I think I've kept myself below 3 minutes there as well.
No, Belle, that was fantastic. Thank you. I think that's right, and it's that importance of communication, isn't it, between your neighbours, between your community as well. But it's also great to hear how many kind of volunteers then have volunteered to be involved. And I think, you know, we've seen that across lots of different sectors, including my own. Alison, should we try again?
Okay.
She's not come back on the attendee.
No?
I think.
Okay.
So I wonder, Councillor Brock, we're very grateful for the time you've been able to spend with us this evening. I know that you have to leave at 8 o'clock today, so we hoped, if possible, to ask you something about the campaign. About our new campaign to ask the UK government to invest the 1.4 billion needed to pay care workers the real living wage of £9.30 an hour. Reading Council is already an accredited living wage employer. Would you support our call on the government to invest so that care workers can be paid the real living wage?
Yeah, and I should have said, sorry, thank you for inviting me here in the first place. Great pleasure to be here. Sorry that I had to leave early. Of course, I mean, it's a campaign that I would support. As you say, I mean, the council here has been a living wage employer for some years. It's something incredibly important to us. We would never compromise on that. It's effectively, to my mind, it's a no-brainer. Now, of course, the money involved, the 1.4 billion, is considerable, but it is not insurmountable by any stretch. And councils could not afford to pass this without government support. And it's something, A, of course, I'd support, and B, if there's any way in which I can actively help you in your lobbying efforts, please do let me know.
Thank you, Councillor Brook. I'm sure we'll be back to you on that one. And thank you for giving us your time this evening. Over to you, Kashida.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon everyone here at the Assembly. My name is Khurshida Mirza, and I'm a leader of Truby's Garden Tea Room and a former co-chair of Citizens MK. There are many others from civil society who've stepped up during the COVID crisis. What I want to do today is to highlight some of the contributions from the Muslim community. Islam places great importance on caring for one another, especially its neighbours and communities. So in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, worship God, join nothing with him, be good to your parents, to your relatives, to orphans, to the needy, to neighbours near and far, to travellers in need. Certainly God says that he does not like arrogant or boastful people. And in practicing our faith at Truby's Garden Tea Room, what we have been doing is supporting our neighbours and community, and that has stretched from Muslims and non-Muslims. So during Ramadan, we delivered 23 Ramadan food parcels, Eid hampers in partnership with Dreams Die, Eid hampers to all those in MK and safe houses with an Eid gift. And our food hampers included fresh halal meat for Muslim families, they included specialist food, and also accommodated dietary requirements such as allergens, and were substantial enough to feed a large family for several weeks. Another great example is from Middle Eastern Cultural Group, and this is the Sewing for the NHS, which has spanned across Bedfordshire, Bucks and MK. The team started with 8 families and now has grown to more than 3,600 volunteers. As I said, it covers Bedfordshire, Bucks and MK and includes all key workers. It provides scrub bags and headbands for those working in care homes, Woodhill Prison in Milton Keynes, and the COVID-19 ward at the University Hospital in Milton Keynes. And the last example that I picked out to share is this amazing story of one local woman who has done everything to give back to her community, and her name is Naseem Khan. She's the owner of Namji Restaurant in Wolverton, in the square, and Give Back to You UK is a social enterprise that she has created to advance education skills for women from disadvantaged backgrounds. Naseem is well known throughout, everyone knows that she's always helping the homeless and those in need. But what she's done particularly during COVID-19 is that every week she's cooked and delivered meals with her volunteers to the homeless and also the University Hospital, as well as supporting doctors, surgeries, pharmacies and key workers who have been busy working around the clock. What I wanted to conclude with was to share this feedback that we received just recently from one of our Truby supporters. And I think this kind of sums it up why we do it. So Nigel and Sue wrote to me saying, last Friday, which was the day before Eid, our close neighbour, Hasim, knocked on our door and gave us some beautifully cooked food and Eid gift. We thanked him and he said as he left, we love our neighbours. Truly, Sue and I are very blessed to have wonderful neighbours like you and inspirational friends as you, to warm our hearts, inspire us and give us all hope in difficult times. I think this kind of sums it up why we do it and how we practice our faith, and especially during COVID-19. So that said, I would now like to ask Brother Salim from Milton Keynes Muslim Association to talk about some of the good work he has been involved in. So if I invite Brother Salim, please.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, which means peace and blessing of the Creator be with you all. My name is Salim Salam. I work as a prisoner custody officer with the Ministry of Justice through GOME. My job is to transport prisoners across the Thames Valley region. I also volunteer at Milton Keynes Muslim Association, where I am in charge of food bank project. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we distributed hot meals weekly to YMCA and the homeless. During Ramadan, we distributed daily to the NHS in conjunction with Al-Fiqh UK. We also delivered food parcels weekly around 33 families, struggling families around Milton Keynes. We also donated 10 body bags to the mortuary. I also lead the Milton Keynes bereavement team, Milton Keynes Muslim Association bereavement team. And Dr. Dawar of Milton Keynes University Hospital approached me with the idea of collaborating and working together with other MK mosques under one umbrella in handling bereavement issues during the COVID-19 pandemic. After consultations and meetings with few other doctors and 5 mosques representative around MK, the Milton Keynes Burial Service Group was formed. One of the rights of the deceased person in Islam is to be buried as soon as possible after their death occurs. After this evening, I will request the Milton Keynes Council leader to extend online death registration services to weekends and bank holidays. Thank you all for having me. God bless you all.
Anne-Marie, can you please introduce Sarah Fernandez? You need to unmute yourself.
Oh, I did that on purpose, so everyone else is a little bit more comfortable with it all. Great. So please, yes, can I introduce Sarah Fernandez, CEO of Oxford Hub.
Hi there, it's Rosanna here from the Oxford Hub. Unfortunately, Sarah couldn't make it this evening. She's doing some work on the ground. So you have me instead, and I hope that's an acceptable replacement.
Very much so. Hi, Rosanna.
So at the Oxford Hub, we are a place-based charity, and we normally coordinate volunteers across the city on a range of issues. We normally place about 800 volunteers over the course of a year. And right before the lockdown started, Sarah thought we should put a call out for volunteers to have people helping their neighbours during whatever was coming next. And while we place normally 800 volunteers in a year, we had about 2,000 people sign up in 2 weeks. So on our staff team of 8, everyone has been incredibly busy setting up a system so that people can volunteer to help out their neighbours. We've had a network of street champions getting in touch with all of their neighbours on their street for that informal support. We've set up a system with practical support volunteers who are linked with households who need help with shopping or maybe collecting their pensions or whatever tasks are made more difficult at the moment. And as well as the amazing kind of voluntary will that's been shown by the City of Oxford, we've also really benefited from all the partnership work that suddenly at the drop of the hat has been possible at the moment. And I think that's something that is really positive about how everyone's been able to come together, and I think is something that I'm really looking forward to seeing here as well. So I think this couldn't be at a better time for kind of taking that power of working together and kind of the crest of the wave right now and seeing where we can take it.
Thank you, Rosanna. Thank you. I completely agree. The power of volunteering, it's really come to the forefront in this recent time. And am I also introducing them, please, Anne Haig-Smith as well, Director of Activate Learning Foundation as well.
Hello,
Annie.
Good evening. Thank you.
Hi,
Thank you. I'm going to share with you some short stories that represent the local community response from our Activate Learning further education colleges through lockdown in the Thames Valley, where we're based. We provide courses in our 7 colleges in the region that are mainly aimed at those who are 16 to 90. We have adults as well. And of course, like every other educational institution, we've gone through massive disruption, massive change in the way we deliver learning, but also at the same time, we've stayed open for all our vulnerable learners. So it's been quite hard work. So 4 quick stories then. One of our tutors, Sam Robertson from Bracknell and Wokingham College, used her ceramic skills to raise money for NHS charities by throwing pottery. She's created cacti and herb planters in her home studio and has raised several £100s so far. Another business teacher, Catherine, from our Banbury and Bicester College, put her skills to good use to create reusable fabric headbands at home to help frontline NHS workers nationwide stay comfortable in the fight against COVID-19. Catherine started doing these at home after seeing images on social media of nurses with sores on their faces from wearing PPE all day. And her headbands have been in really high demand, as you might imagine, and been used by NHS staff in all sorts of different hospitals and surgeries and practices and care homes. Another one of our skilled staff has been making reusable headbands that protect the visors using 3D printers from Reading College, which she took home and used. Each headband takes about 3 hours to make, apparently, and she sent them off to a local company who are then distributing them to the NHS. And then finally, Reading College sourced nearly 4,000 items of PPE from its state-of-the-art care skills suite and donated them to the Berkshire Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust. Things like face masks, scrubs, aprons, cleaning wipes and everything. And they were incredibly grateful to receive them because, as we all know at the time, PPE was in tremendously short supply.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank
really
you.
Great to hear those stories. I'm sure there were thousands more.
There were hundreds.
Hundreds. I hope they're all being recorded. Thank you. We've had a chance in this first part of the evening to listen to some stories from people who've been on the front line during the COVID crisis. And it's really, really great and inspiring to hear those stories. And we want to show our appreciation to everyone who's been working so hard. Tomorrow, we will be sending something special to those who've been speaking as a way of saying thank you. But now it's time to move on to look ahead to the world we want to see in the Thames Valley. So over to you again, Anne-Marie.
Thank you. So one problem that the COVID-19 crisis has revealed is the issue of digital poverty, and one, as you know, working within the university, I'm acutely aware of. And this is particularly relevant in rural areas and disadvantaged communities. So I'm going to ask Val Plum to tell us a little bit more about how it affects people in her area. Hello, Val, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Fantastic. Hi.
On rural. Hi, I'm the Area Dean for Rural Mission and Development in the Archdeaconry of Buckingham in the Diocese of Oxford. I've spent the last 5 years living and working across rural Buckinghamshire. And throughout this time, one of the most repetitive challenges for me and for many, many others has been the lack of functional broadband. Now, you might think this is trivial and we all need to be a little bit more patient with our technology, but I can tell you it's deeper and more powerful than that. This recent pandemic has absolutely showcased the problems more than ever. Here's 2 examples. One, a young professional family with 2 children, both parents willing and able to support their child's education needs throughout lockdown, and yet unable to access online support. And secondly, an isolated, extremely vulnerable person who loses their only chance to video call their loved ones. Yes, they can chat on the phone, but it's so heartbreaking to hear the words, "I just miss them and I want to see their face." Even before lockdown, there was a constant frustration within family homes because media has become so important to both young and old. In village life, where there isn't a great deal for young people to be, the internet becomes the place to meet. With decent broadband, folks can now work from home. Essential goods could be ordered and delivered, and a necessary window to the world is not denied. All across Thames Valley, rural villages are now waking up to the possibility of fairer standards in internet access, working closely in community partnerships with broadband suppliers. Not all funding is coming from the government, so it's rapidly becoming a real chance for local people, local businesses and local government to connect, to help and financially support their communities to resolve broadband issues. With the support of community organiser at Citizens MK, I am currently building a team to campaign for a community fibre partnership with outreach to give them the internet that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. That's really great to hear. We're also going to hear from Judith Sumner from Reading Minster. Judith, are you there?
I'm here, thank you.
Hello.
Hello. My name's Judith Sumner. I've been at Reading Minster for 4 years, first as a curate and now as an associate minister. We've got a core congregation with a large percentage of over 70s at the Minster, many of whom have served the Minster faithfully for many, many years. And so I wanted to tell you about one particular member of a former member of the congregation, really, because that's how she's been feeling as a former member of the congregation. She was a PCC treasurer and server, but for the past 3 years has been unable to come to church due to her Parkinson's disease diagnosis. She receives regular phone calls and home communion and our news sheet, but has really just felt that she's no longer part of the congregation. But during lockdown, we tentatively began Zooming our Sunday morning service and have been able to include people like her on the telephone. And for the first time in 3 years, she's been able to hear those familiar voices as part of the service, been able to join in with the liturgy and really feel part of the congregation once again. Obviously, this would have been even better had she known how to use a laptop or been able to have an iPad or sort of done that all before she got to this stage of her health. Following lockdown, we're hoping to continue the availability of our services online in some way. But for many of our elderly congregation approaching a time that perhaps they won't be able to come to church, they really would benefit from some basic teaching and confidence with technology, so that if they get to this latest stage and are unable to come, that maybe they can access and feel part of the congregation once more, and to continue that right through, even if they can't actually physically come to church. So our local organiser, from Citizens UK, found a group at the university willing to help with tech support. And for beginners online, that might mean ensuring that their iPad or tablet is set up in a way that's easy to use, perhaps teaching the basics, enabling them to access what they need. For us at the Minster, it might be some help with how to stream a service from church while we're actually when we're back in church again. But there are so many reasons why people may not be able to physically join us in the building, not least because of those shielding from COVID-19. And as a church committed to being inclusive, it would be great to ensure that we can extend our welcome and hospitality to people at home for the whole of their lives.
Fantastic. Thank you, Judith. It's really helpful to hear about your experiences, and we look forward to seeing how things unfold. I think, you know, this is a real great example of how we can move just from listening to problems in our local area to turning it into an issue around which we can campaign. And that's our focus now. So what are the problems that Thames Valley faces, and how can we take action for change?
Thank you.
What happened? Hi everyone, I don't know why we're here. I think it's a glitch. So just gonna, you know, stare at each other until we go back to the main room.
Hi Catherine, nice to see you.
Hi Tom. Hello. I think we were going to go into our small breakout rooms next, but I wasn't expecting it quite so suddenly.
Yeah. I mean, according to the script, I should have been introducing the second act. So, and I was gonna say, you know.
Yeah, tell us what you were going to say.
I was going to thank everybody for, you know, making Steph's job really unnecessary today, because they kept it at 3 minutes, and it's flowing beautifully. So we're keeping, you know, track on track. So I was going to thank people for, you know, doing that, and that we were going to actually be talking about what kind of world we're looking after COVID, after this experience, you know, what is the kind of world we are all looking forward to. And as you might have noticed, and now Milton Keynes citizens are, you know, becoming a bigger unit with the citizens of Oxford and Reading. So we're now under a new umbrella, and this is our first, you know, assembly as such a unit. So it's really great to see, you know, so many lovely faces, different faces that, you know, not that Milton Keynes faces are, you know, not beautiful and nice, but, you know, new faces, and I'm sure new energy and new sort of power. So actually the mini house meetings, we should be discussing what injustices and inequalities have COVID-19 created or exacerbated in the Thames Valley area. And what do you want personally Thames Valley to be like post-COVID, and how can we make sure it is more just? So please unmute your microphones and shout out your ideas. It'd be great to hear from you.
Hello, if everybody doesn't unmute, keep it on mute, and if you want to speak, just press your space bar. That's
I think we can behave ourselves, Linda, you know.
Yeah, and basically it means that you don't get the sort of cut interruptions all the time. So the person speaking actually is the person who's there.
So would you like to start, Linda, you know, answering this question? And for keeping track of time, everybody has got 30 seconds.
Oh my goodness. So what sort of world are we looking forward to? Well, quite honestly, I think lots of people will be working at home. It's going to be very, very different. But I think that the people who are disadvantaged at the moment, maybe even, I mean, I'm thinking more about the homeless, maybe even more disadvantaged.
Yeah.
You know, right now I'm in a club that's cooking, baking for a lady who provides meals for 70 people a day. You know, and what is going to happen to those homeless people once this is finished? You know?
Yeah, I can see we've got 2 young people from MK Academy, so maybe I'll ask you that very same question, Chloe and Harvin. So start with Chloe, always ladies first.
So I think one of the injustices that COVID-19 has kind of really
brought to light is the socioeconomic disadvantage of ethnic minorities. So, for example, the socioeconomic kind of plight of ethnic minorities is really being shown in the fact that there are more cases of ethnic minorities dying of COVID-19 due to maybe overcrowded living conditions or just their socioeconomic disadvantages. So I think that's really something that even maybe just starting with housing conditions or something is something that should and hopefully will be changed after this.
Absolutely, that's a very, very good point. Thank you. Haven't any thoughts?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Chloe, but it's also education as well. These young people might not have access to internet, and schools are setting work more online. It's obviously going to be harder for them to catch up. So I feel like they are at a bigger disadvantage compared to everyone else. So it'll be very different.
It is definitely a different world altogether. You know, we're doing everything, you know, in a different way. Tom Bartlett from Oxford. Hi there.
Actually, from Oxford, I work for Aspire Oxford, is the proper title. Working here in Milton Keynes with ex-offenders.
I see.
Yeah. Now, Anthony Stansfeld touched on one concern that I share and my colleagues share about potential spike in crime. You know, once the lockdown ends, and a number of people are really struggling. Particularly our clients, who many of whom you know are coming out of prison. And there is also a housing crisis in Milton Keynes, as you may know, a lack of affordable housing, lack of social housing. We have guys going into hotels on a temporary arrangement with nowhere else to go after that. So that's the bad news. The good news is there's you know, with all of us going online more and digital inclusion and whatnot, we're very well connected. And I have ex-offender clients who are, in the past, wouldn't have anything to do with laptops and going digital, who have now taken a great interest in it. And that's a good sign because they're doing online learning. We, through a grant from the MK Community Foundation, we've been able to distribute 10 laptops to clients who had a phone, basic mobile phone. So I think there is hope there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mr. Tarbet, I think, you know, you might want to add something. I mean, we did listen that the number of offenses have decreased, especially robbery. But, you know, the future, the post-COVID, what are your expectations? Can you unmute your... Can you unmute your microphone is muted still. It's if you look on the screen, it's your left hand, it's the bottom side of the left hand corner.
There we go. Sorry about that. I've been using Teams so much recently, I've forgotten how to unmute on Teams. So yeah, I'm the police commander for Milton Keynes. That's I guess why that's my perspective might be interesting. Everything I've listened to so far is really relevant, I think, around inequalities and the future. I think in terms of crime, it's difficult for us. So we saw some changes in the drug market with lockdown because international travel was harder. The ability to move heroin and crack around meant that cannabis became more prevalent. So as the borders have become more relaxed, I guess one of the things we were anticipating, county drug lines found it harder to operate, and we are maybe a bit concerned that as drug lines try to re-establish themselves, there may be more violent crime linked to that. If that's a concern for us. I also think the whole domestic abuse issue was a concern for us. So we spent a lot of time looking around hidden harm, so what was going on behind closed doors during lockdown, and actually proactively reaching out to people who we thought might be vulnerable. People we had heard from quite a lot in relation to domestic abuse, and then suddenly stopped hearing from them, or children who should have been turning up for school and then weren't. So there's been quite a lot of work we've done around that. And I also think, kind of looking forward, I think there's likely to be more demonstrations. I think maybe we're in for a summer of demonstrations. I think, people have come out of lockdown. I think the Black Lives Matter movement has created a wave of people looking for something better, having come out of lockdown. And I think for us, the real challenge will be managing protest. It's really challenging, managing protests in the time of the pandemic.
Yeah. The one we had here in Milton Keynes and was pretty well organized, I hear. There was no account of violence whatsoever. People kept their social distance, and it was managed beautifully. So, I think that outside the station it was managed well. Outside the train station, then there was a splinter group that walked off. And there's some challenges for us around, I guess, the whole Black Lives Matter and the death of George Floyd by the police creates some unique challenges for the police in that diversity and inclusion is important for us within policing, and we obviously have some empathy with communities and demonstrators, but we need to tread a careful line between, showing, maintaining our impartiality. So you will have seen some police officers, taking a knee with demonstrators. Yeah. And it's just, I think in the white heat of these immediate reaction, that was probably the right thing to do. But I think as we move further away from the incident itself, you'll be less likely to do that. Yeah. Thank you so much. That was, very interesting. Catherine, any thoughts about, from your congregation of people you meet?
Hi, everyone. I'm Catherine, and I'm a vicar of a church in Bletchley in Milton Keynes. I think it's been evident that while the virus has no discrimination between who's infected by it, the inequalities in our society have been made more evident because of the virus. So the disadvantages that people have, as Chloe mentioned, obviously put people at a significant disadvantage in the face of a virus that is indiscriminate in the way that it spreads. And so that's, I suppose, one observation, just generally speaking. I think something just that I would like to see as we come out of the lockdown and into the summer and the future is a sort of readiness to address some of the things that have been exposed, and a readiness to say, okay, those things are real, have been very real, and have been very evident over the last few months. And how do we then acknowledge and change those things that have been exposed as a result of the virus, whether it's to do with the inequalities that Chloe was talking about, or digital inequality that we've been talking about, and that we heard about in the larger group as well. So a kind of commitment to listening and working for change in that regard. And sort of, I'd love to think that our neighbourliness and the kindness that has been also evidenced over the last few weeks would be perpetuated, would be continued, and that somehow we would not be so quickly back into our routines as they were, that we forget to make space for doing the work that builds community in a way that has been sort of almost forced upon us, but has been a real blessing for many, many people over the last few weeks.
That's lovely thought. Thank you, Catherine. Jane, would you like to share your views with us?
Yes, to pick up on what Superintendent Tarbit said about domestic abuse. I think the pandemic has exposed a lot of structural inequalities, starting in the home. I think the division of domestic labour, quite often falls disproportionately on women. And with the lack of childcare during the pandemic, I think that's been sort of brought to the fore. Also exposed, how we rely on the key workers in the care sector. And these are the people that, you know, we're being told were unskilled. And we've now got an immigration bill that's coming up, you know, and I hope that, you know, those people that have put their lives on the line will be recognised, you know, by the government and by the communities.
Yeah, we've heard some beautiful stories today, and I think, you know, you're absolutely right that, you know, the role that civil society has played has been enormous in, you know, they were like the front line, you know, people who just the backbone of you know, the society. So we do need to recognize that and respect that and work, you know, from there on. Okay, get ready to feedback. We need 2 observations about injustices, inequalities that COVID has created or exacerbated, and 2 things to change. So let's think about that, because they will call us to report, and we're ready in 57 seconds. So step.
Thanks, everyone. We are coming back into the main room now, so please welcome people as they come back. Hala, I think it's over to you now to take us through the feedback.
Thank you very much, Tim. Yeah, we, as we asked everybody in the mini house meetings, we need to hear back from you guys, just a feedback, quick one. What injustices and inequalities has COVID-19 created or exacerbated in the Thames Valley area? So in your chat rooms, you probably have discussed these issues. We need to hear from you. And what do we want? What do we want Thames Valley to be like post-COVID? And how can we make how can we make it more just society? So maybe the best way is to probably unmute people. If you want to raise your hand, if you want to share your views with us, I think this is the way we have agreed to do it, Tim, or not?
Hala, there's a list of names in the script. I'll read it out to you as you go.
Oh,
so
thank you.
The first group would be the group that Kashida was facilitating, Chloe Harding.
Thank you. Great. Yeah.
So in our group, one of the main things that we kind of agreed was that societal injustices have been shown in the form of, you know, maybe ethnic minorities being more likely to die from coronavirus and due to like maybe their housing conditions and their socioeconomic disadvantage. So one of the changes that we said that we'd like to see is we'd like to see a readiness to address these issues and to, you know, just a readiness to be able to change these issues. And then another injustice that kind of struck me was the fact that we talked about how key workers are often classed as unskilled. And, you know, from this pandemic, we would like the change to be that we appreciate these key workers more because they have kind of put their lives on the line to save us.
Thank you.
Sorry, Tim, can I just say that Chloe was not in our group and it was Kirsty who took our notes.
Okay, so I'm looking at my list there. So, crumbs, I've got the wrong list then. So, Kirsty, can I have Kirsty speaking?
Yep, sure, sorry. So the 2 main observations that we had regarding inequalities and injustices we've experienced from COVID-19 were centrally around digital poverty and poverty and disadvantage in general. So there were plenty of examples with regard to digital poverty, and one aspect in particular was the elderly being quite disadvantaged in that respect and not having access to even use these tools. So we were talking about how older people should have training, we should have more access to equipment for all, and especially for school children.
Thank you.
That's it.
That's okay. We've got to keep the time because we've got to be disciplined. The group that was facilitated by Catherine Butt, I think, had Fidel. Fidel?
Sorry, Chloe fed back from our group.
Okay, brilliant. I'm pretty confident that the group that Lynn Smith will be able to speak for the group that I was facilitating. Lynn.
We discussed quite a few things, and there were one or two issues that came up, including the loneliness and etc., which could lead to mental health issues, and the fact that people don't have access, that the longer that they're isolated, and people who have existing mental health issues, they don't have access to those services, and also the impact of the environment on the environment, with people not being able to dispose of rubbish, taking their dogs for a walk, and the bins not being emptied, etc. So there are a couple of the things, not all of them, but a couple of them. And the changes moving forward we'd like to see within Milton Keynes, certainly a better public transport system. It was built around the car. And so if we could look at better cycle paths or other means of transport that would keep the air clean that we've all been experiencing during lockdown. And a better way of actually getting rid of that waste and recycling when things pick up again. That could have an impact on all sorts of things. Maybe staggered working hours would have an impact on travel, etc. But they're just two. We had a lot more, but I'll be quiet now.
Thank you. Jo Moffat-Levy?
Hi. One issue that came up in many people's comments was that loneliness and isolation were relevant across the generations, from the very youngest to the very oldest, and that was an issue that was brought up by several people. The other big theme in terms of what we were seeing was an amplification of inequalities, and that's a theme that's come out all through our meeting today, that communities that were already advantaged coped better, people who are advantaged coped better. In terms of what we wanted to see happen, one issue particularly about Oxford was the vast inequality in housing and other things in Oxford. Across the Thames Valley too, that can be an issue. We'd like to see more to tackle that. The second thing that came up was about fair employment, sustainable employment, and the long term, looking to an economy that was much more secure for people in the long term.
Thank you. Thank you, Jo. Keith Hebden?
Hello, thank you. So feeding back that we particularly noticed that all systems that are currently under strain are under even more strain, waiting lists growing longer, backlogs. And one thing that came across from what a lot of people said was the digital divide, particularly how the digital divide affects people in training who are unemployed or have become unemployed due to the pandemic and the lockdown, and young people, and particularly vulnerable young people, people whose parents might struggle to try and educate them at home, or children who are at risk. So we heard a lot about children not having access to Wi-Fi or any sort of tech apart from their phones at best, and therefore excluded from all the good stuff that's being offered and the stuff that's being scaled up from providers like OU or Active Learning or others. In terms of solutions, we wondered about extra provision for disadvantaged children, clubs and twilight sessions, for example, as soon as the lockdown is over. So outside of schools and evenings and weekends, can we now start thinking about what we can offer to help bridge that gap that we're noticing? And can we use our community places for schooling to support schools? And finally, can work experience students, instead of doing work experience, do volunteering work, releasing thousands of students as volunteers?
Thank you, Keith. Nabin Akaria?
Hello, everyone, again. Yeah.
Nabin.
Yeah. Thank you, team. Well, as I mentioned here, the Nepalese community, they are vulnerable people. Mostly the Nepalese community composed of 80% of ex-British Gorkha Army families. Okay, I strongly believe that we can't forget their services and sacrifices. And now they are frail, weak, elderly, economically backward. They are in the real poverty, digital poverty. So in this difficult time, socially isolated, now emotionally they are scared of this pandemic and living in very poorly housing. Most of these Nepalese family are living in multiple occupation houses. So we need to think about, if we keep, the virus will be always there. If they still living in that condition, we might push them further to the danger. So we need to think that at least the local council can think about housing facility to be extended to them. And I think in present scenario, they cannot access the housing services. Even they cannot bid. So I already mentioned that we need to have a dedicated desk to serve this community, to read their letters, to put their appointments in order. They cannot get even a GP appointment on their own because of inability to speak English, and inability of their digital knowledge. So we need to think about these people are, they say sometimes forgotten Gorkha. I always mention sometimes that they are a walking ghost in our cities. They never appear in the electoral audit. Neither the councillor nor the local MPs hear about their voices. The voices are already mute. They never raise their voices. We cannot hear their voices. We are some of the volunteers who used to raise. I mentioned in front of the councillors, in front of the local MPs. These people never appear, but we had their services. They give blood, they give life to this country. So we need to think about these people. They are, most of these people are 60 plus, 70, 75, some are 80, and nearly 3 people died around my area in Reading. And lots of them have caught this infectious disease. So we need to think about these people, and we need to have some discussions with the local government and the central government to access some fund to have a dedicated team to serve this community.
Thank you, Navin. No, these are important stories to hear. Thank you, Navin. And not Sarah Gardner.
Hi, yes, I'm conscious of time, so I'll keep this as brief as I can. We talked about a lot of issues, but a couple of the key themes were around mental health impacts. So people have talked a lot about loneliness and isolation already. We were talking about the quality of life during lockdown, and linked to that was the issue of domestic abuse and coercive control. And we also talked about food hunger, and particularly holiday hunger, which a lot of us are aware of, but the additional demand that there's been during the pandemic. Unfortunately, we talking about the issues, didn't actually get changes, but we did sample these that people were already kind of supporting the community and working in partnership together. So I think we'd really like to build on that.
Thank you, Sarah. And I know that all the information from those groups will be shared, and we'll be able to do some more with it. Technology got a bit the better of us in that section, but thank you for being patient with us and going with the breakout rooms. I think it was a useful opportunity to hear different voices. As we move forward now, right, sorry, I'm just going to check what I'm doing. We've heard a lot of ways we could see change in the Thames Valley. And I hope that the recent death of George Floyd in America has redoubled our desire to see a Thames Valley that is not racist. When we see the Black Lives Matter campaigns on TV, it's easy to think that it's not a problem here. If that's what you think, then here are some voices that we must hear. Over to you, Fidel.
Thank you, Tim. My name is Fidel Mutuarasivo. I am from the Church of Christ, the Cornerstone in Milton Keynes. Soon after arriving in Milton Keynes in 2014, I saw statistics in a report by MK Community Foundation, which suggested that there had been an increase of 42% in race/religion-related hate crimes in MK. So this was what prompted me to engage subsequently in what became the Fight Against Hate campaign. Sadly, the problems of hate have not gone away. And obviously what is happening in the United States has got some relevance in the UK as we speak. So I'm going to pass you over on to Philip. Philip, the floor is yours.
Philip, are
Hello.
you there?
Yeah, I was mute. Sorry, I had to unmute. Hi, everyone. My name is Philip Shamamba. I'm leader of Milton Keynes Congolese community. I joined MK Citizens 10 years ago, and I received my leadership training as well. A few weeks ago, I was driving to the shop to get essentials to get food for my family, and I noticed a roadblock ahead. And when I stopped to do a U-turn, a police officer approached me and then asked me to run down my window, which I did. Surprisingly, the officer said my car smelled of drugs. I was really surprised. And they asked me to step out, and I stepped out. And then he started asking me questions. And then his colleague went to the other side of the car, started checking if there's anything. And after a few minutes, he came and said, "Oh, there was nothing special," and they said I could go. I mean, I get stopped quite often, which is unlikely to my white counterpart, and I wonder why. I mean, how would you feel if this kept happening to you? I would like to do something about this by getting leaders from cities and MK and leaders from our community, I mean, Black community. And most importantly, I also would like to get the police area to hear our stories and see how we can all find a solution to this issue, because I think it's just it's going to get out of hand. Thank you.
It's Fidel once again. Thank you, Phil. So at the Church of Christ, the Cornerstone, we will also be doing a listening exercise to try to figure out what is happening in the community. And we will be asking our police commander, Mark, who is actually attending the meeting with us, to discuss the results of our discussions, obviously, along with other organizations. This will help in ensuring that voices are heard, and that in this particular case, the Black Lives Matter in the Milton case, in the Thames Valley area. We were meant to have a minute silence today, but because we are slightly late, I'm going to propose that we observe a minute silence in our own time when the meeting is done. Over to Hara, I think.
Thank you, Fidel. And I do second your suggestion with the 1 minute silence. So we're going to be observing that in our own time. So in the first act of this assembly, we heard how COVID has been for public service leaders. In the second act, we listened to our own experiences. Now in the third act, we're going to look at what we can do now to make a difference. We have got 5 asks that come out of the listening and live experience of people across the Thames Valley, and which have been prioritized for action. They are, first, improving death registration services. Second, deepening relationships between police and young people. Thirdly, taking action on misogyny. Fourthly, winning a real living wage for care workers. Fifth, tackling climate change. 4 of these are campaigns that were presented and approved at the first Thames Valley Delegates Assembly back in February. We want to outline all our asks and afterwards ask each of our guest power holders to respond to them simultaneously. Alison, over to you.
Thanks. In Citizens, we very often use the word testimony. And a testimony is a personal story of how a problem affects real people. We know that testimonies can unlock difficult situations and move people to take action. So we're now going to hear some more testimonies and also ask some of our guests to help us. This final section of our evening is really important because we want to achieve change rather than merely talk about it. So each of the next speakers will introduce themselves, and do remember to turn off your mute on your Zoom. So the first one is Amsalim.
Thank you very much to have me again. As I said earlier, I would like to ask the Milton Keynes Council to facilitate online death registration on weekends and bank holidays. The problem with the way things are is that it is part of our religion as Muslims to arrange funerals quickly, and we cannot do this in Milton Keynes. But you can do this in the neighboring counties, such as Aylesbury and High Wycombe. Councillor Mallard, will you work with us to introduce online registration of death registration facility on the weekend and bank holidays, please? Thank you.
Hello, I'm Chloe, a student at MK Academy. We've seen the results of a survey done by pupils at 2 local primary schools last year, and we're pleased to know that MK police officers have been visiting primary pupils informally during school lunch hours. Police and Crime Commissioner, in light of the recent events in America, we would like to talk to you about how people of colour and ethnic minorities are treated by police in Thames Valley and how this affects their relationship with the police. Our research has led to statistics from the Macpherson report that show that black people are over 9 times more likely to be stopped and searched than white people, 3 times more likely to be arrested, and 5 times more likely to have force used against them.
My name is Harvind, and I'm also an MK Academy student. We are currently conducting a survey of students in our school, which shows that while most have not had a negative experience with the police, many are scared that a negative.
So I'm Jane Wild from the Open University, and I'm leading